be on this board, and then we don't have the required votes to make sure that they're there. So I think it's a process we need to improve. Maybe it's something that maybe government ops can look at as far as term limits and everything else on that.
Can I just respond to that really
You
quick?
can.
So is it possible that we can put something on the website to allow people to apply for all the committee positions that we have in the county? I mean, we have so many various boards and stuff that we have to staff, and I mean, we do attempt to find people in our districts or otherwise, and maybe there are people out there that we don't meet that would be interested in applying for them and throwing their hat in the ring. So maybe that's an idea too. We can also talk about it at government operations.
No, I think that's a great idea, just to have that database of people that are interested in serving. Thank you. Mr. Bennett.
Yes, I'd like to see somehow, I don't know how it's so old school, try to get away from the political party dealings and become a more bipartisan group of diversified people we put on these committees. And it doesn't matter how many of this party or how many of that party. If it takes 5-1 just because they're the qualified people, that's the way it should be. We should not isolate people and stuff and be held hostage by parties and stuff.
I agree. Ms. Daly.
I just wondered if there's any central place where the upcoming appointments that are due can be found. I mean, to the point of if we're supposed to go out and try to recruit people to fill positions, it almost seems, unless there's a listing that I'm not aware of, that the appointment is up and now it's going to get talked about, but there's no looking forward to see what might be up.
It is on the webpage.
It is. All the appointments that are due for the year.
They're on our spreadsheets.
Right, the appointment member lists are on there, which have expiration
Dates.
dates on there, but there's no like one centralized, like, oh, all these appointments are coming up.
Yeah, you'd have to look at
For
each
this.
agency or board individually.
But that's something we could create.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
and I don't think it would take a lot of work to do. And, and Mr. Chair, if I may, to the points about, trying to figure out a way to develop a system, we can come up with some ideas. When I was a planning director and had to staff a planning board, a zoning board, and, all the other committees that went along with that, we would have an application process when we had a vacancy. We would screen those applicants for qualifications and then submit nominations, our recommendations to the mayor, who would put them forward to the council. And sometimes he'd say, no, not that person, you don't know him. But most of the time, he would move forward with our recommendations based on merit and qualification. So that's one concept, and we could potentially do something like that through our online application process, through Human Resources or something like that, if there's interest.
Mr. Batman.
Yeah, before we go too far down this road, I think that someone will need to put together a list, because many of the appointments are at the recommendation of the board, and it's not our option to simply say, we would like this person or that person. And so that's an important piece of information. The other thing I would add, I think, Sheila, don't you do a list every year of the appointments that are coming up?
Well, plus, if you're going to change terms on anything, then each of those boards or agencies would have to change their bylaws, because
Right,
that's
so-
what states the terms.
Yeah, that's just important stuff to remember, that we sometimes think that we're the be-all and the end-all. Unfortunately, we're not often. That's the case, is that we're acting to some extent, in many cases, as a representative of the people and the organizations, acting upon their recommendations. And so it's that we don't want to get into a conflict with a functioning group. So it's not that these aren't all good ideas, it's just that we have to be careful how we implement them.
Mr. Dennison.
That's exactly why I want more information about the people brought forward to us, because it's not so much us out recruiting people. It usually is the boards giving us their recommendations. And, I'm not trying to start any kind of arguments, but that's how boards tend to get heavy in one direction or another, because they recommend these people. They come in front of us on the screen right here, and it's yay or nay. I don't know who Joe Schmuck is recommended for this board. but we're yay or nay in him because that board said he was the right choice, and that's how boards tend to get swayed one way or the other.
Mr. Batman?
Well, no, and I totally agree that it's an important thing, and the appointments are critical decisions that we make, and we need to be careful with them. But for most recommendations, we actually get a sheet that has if you think back, if you, on your committee, you have a sheet that says the person's name, the person's background, who's recommended the person, have they served on the board before, why are they qualified, and so on. So we do have that basic information. It may not be sufficient, but it's not as if, most of the time, it's not as if we're getting names just out of the blue and going, who is that? That does happen, and it shouldn't, you're right. I totally agree, it should never happen. But I'm not sure if we need a new system as much as simply to re-examine the one we have, tweak it a little bit, and then see if we're good with it. But, and that's not to disagree. I do understand the point. I think it's a good one.
Any other legislators' reports? Mr. Lattimore?
In regards to procedure, I mean, the two names that were going to be brought to the board tonight, is it my understanding that the chairman's the only one who can bring a name to the body?
It is my understanding that anybody, the appointment comes from the legislature. My intent was to get the more information by putting those two names out to this body to see if we wanted to go down this road. That was the intent of putting names out there.
And let me just clarify a little thing about the makeup of the boards. I'd like to see, various different disciplines, especially in the IT. I mean, like Nucor put in a $50 million new rolling plant. It works on 5 different platforms. Not that I understand IT, but they run on, and our college should be able to work in the cloud and other things with their students. So I don't know where they are, but the industries are moving differently than I think we're moving, so.
Any other legislators' reports? If not, County Administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I bring mostly good news. I'm happy to report that Lynn and Melinda and a number of folks in the Treasurer's Office have been working hard to update some numbers and catch up on some work with the significant vacancy we've had. I apologize if I'm not speaking well tonight. I had Novocaine this afternoon with the filling. But we have some adjusted end-of-the-year numbers for you. And our general fund balance, this is in the spreadsheet that I sent you, is up about $2.2 million over the number that was reported previously. And our county road fund, the D fund, is about $250,000 higher than what was reported. So those are our end-of-the-year numbers, and I'm happy to report those to you. I'm also happy to report, after several months of numerous discussions about our broadband process, that the chairman and I met with one of the providers yesterday, and I believe we have all of the outstanding issues worked out. We're drafting language for the permit conditions, and believe that's going to move forward very quickly. So thank you for your continued encouragement to get that done, and I'm happy to report that it's just about done. It's agreed in principle, and now we just have to translate that to writing. The other big thing that we were working on this month, Lynn, Steve, and myself, is the shared service planning. We held, between the end of last month and this meeting, 4 panels. We had an orientation meeting, overviewing the process and what to expect over several panels. We had a panel session on highway and public works, one on assessment and energy procurement, and one on healthcare, the healthcare consortiums and purchasing. A few other topics also discussed, but those were the primary focus of the meetings. We're in a data collection process right now where we're gathering both interest and relevant numbers that we need from the municipalities to compile that into a draft plan that we expect to be presenting to you hopefully, and to the panel, I believe next month, is that right? Next month. So it's a very aggressive timeline that we're on to meet the state, the timeline that we have to meet for the state, but we're on path to complete that. The drainage project, the update on the drainage project, now that the road work is almost done, is that we have our estimate and we're right under budget. I think the authorizing resolution for the drainage work in the parking lot was $250,000. Our estimate came in at $242,000, and that includes a little contingency. We're in the process of drafting, Fred's office is in the office of drafting an intermunicipal agreement whereby the city is going to project manage that for us. They also designed it, so we didn't have to go out and engineer it, and that's a great shared service that we worked with the city. And it was really a great process. The city engineering staff designed the process, worked with Gary and all of our team to get it designed. Now they're going to continue to manage the project and act as clerk of the works through the work. If you aren't aware or haven't been or are interested, Thursday, County Tourism is running an event, a countywide tour to a number of the significant places in the county. As a still relative newcomer, I'm going to jump on that bus and go see everything the county has to offer, or everything they're going to show us. And lastly, the much anticipated, you've been waiting for, the memo about priorities. And I'm very excited to present this to you. A number of departments had significant input on this, certainly everybody who has been affected by it. Lynn worked closely with me to develop the budget numbers. The way I broke this down is into 3 organizational recommendations and 3 recommendations in technology. I don't think any of this will come as a major surprise to you. Number 1 is that we want to move forward with creating a Department of Public Works. We've had the authorization from the Public Works Committee to draft that law. We're working on it, and we expect to have that draft for you next month, hopefully to schedule a hearing in August. And then we would, presuming that you approve it, move forward with a recruitment and hiring process there. It still leaves the question in the meantime of how to move forward, and I have some ideas about how to do that as well that I look forward to discussing with you. Number 2, there's a resolution before you later tonight brought forward by the Treasurer's Office to fill a temporary deputy treasurer. We believe that is addresses an immediate need created by the long-term vacancy in the office that will result in a retirement in January. And I also propose moving that into a finance department. So the idea is that we would hire the acting deputy treasurer, and then that would give us the time to develop any legal structures that we needed to make the moves and budget for the impact, or any impact in 2019. And third, there's been some email discussion about the staff in my office, and I proposed a reorganization of the administrative staff and the adding of a purchasing agent. A purchasing agent is certainly something that we could do in the 2019 budget, but the impact of doing it now is that we could get up and running quicker. We have the money in the budget this year through the salary sweeps and contingency, which is actually up about $40,000 over what was budgeted through as of May 31st, and it's likely to go up more. So purchasing agent, we can wait, but we have a demonstrated need. And as we move forward talking about shared services, a number of those things that we hope to save and recoup comes from having shared purchasing with the towns and villages, whether that be in equipment purchases, whether that be in aggregating materials. In both our case and in many of the municipalities' cases, we're going off of state bids, and we're not doing, or we're piggybacking off somebody else. And we're not always doing the hard work of doing our own bids and getting the best price out there. So out of convenience, people go through OGS or they piggyback off another bid, and sometimes that is the best price. But a lot of times, you put your own bids out, or you aggregate the purchases, and it drives the price down based on the bulk. So in our case, we buy our materials. Most of the municipalities buy off of us. But our hypothesis is that if we bid it out based on the aggregate demand, that demand would drive prices down rather than them just paying for both of us, rather than the municipalities just paying the price that we're already buying. So we're in the process of gathering data to that regard, and that is something that we'll put into the shared services plan, and it's hopefully something that you'll support moving forward. I also propose 3 technology investments. The first one is the most significant, and I believe also yields the greatest return on investment, and that is securing an automated time and attendance system. The way we do time and attendance in the county right now is manual. Each person prints a timesheet, signs it, gives it to their supervisor to be signed. Somebody in the department aggregates those into a spreadsheet, sends it to the treasurer's office, where they're compiled into another spreadsheet, sent back to the department to be reviewed and verified. And then at that point, after we've done all the work, we upload it to ADP, who writes the check and does the tax withholdings, the W-2 statements and the withholdings for us. What we would propose is developing an automated time and attendance system where in departments that have time, as in shift work, we have a beginning time and end time, overtime, et cetera, there would be time clocks, and that those time clocks can be in any number of mechanisms. They can be an actual physical time clock. They can be an app on a phone that allows people within a certain distance to log in, clock in or clock out, a computer, or even a phone. So there's a number of technological options that are available to do that. But what happens then is that the time is standardized, and you only deviate when you use time differently. And then that's accounted for through the system. It goes to the supervisor automatically to be approved, and it's uploaded to the payroll system. So there's incredible efficiencies and less room for error in that process. We don't have a proposal for you to do that right now, but I have been working with payroll and the treasurer's office, IT, and a number of departments to evaluate a solution, and we hope to bring that forward shortly. The other 2 items from a technology investment standpoint, number 1 is a new website, which we've talked about and was on hold pending this presentation of this memo. And the third is a very small investment, but one that the clerk and the county attorney and I feel is very important, and that is codifying the county's laws. That's about a 2-year process. We're talking about $12,000 or $13,000, and that would create a code of our laws that would be searchable and functional and usable by not just everybody that works here or the legislators, but the public. So the total impact of all the investments that I've proposed right now on the 2018 budget is $85,000 in the new position for the purchasing agent. We've got money in other areas of the budget to cover the website. There's other, some of the costs that will carry over into 2019 include the difference in the increase between the salary of a highway superintendent versus a director of public works. And then we've also outlined savings that we've brought forward. So for example, by purchasing cars rather than leasing, we projected to save $150,000 in what was budgeted. Now, the savings are actually going to be even higher because we didn't make that decision until late in the year. So what we're going to end up actually doing is leasing cars for about 3 months, and everything else will roll back to fund balance, which is a good thing. But as we move forward to 2019, our budget request for vehicles in the sheriff's department in the second phase of leasing will be significantly less than what the purchase request was in this year's budget. Additionally, there's money for other things in this year's budget that wouldn't be in next year's budget. For example, like the $75,000 for the Phase 2 of the organizational assessment. So I'm confident that the budgetary requests we're making now, to the extent that they carry over into 2019, we'll be able to identify and afford those costs. So we've got a very small impact in 2018, and we've made moves in 2018 that will create the room for the additional spending in 2019. So, be happy to take any questions.
Mr. Lattimore.
In regards to your financial report, good news in regards to the internet sales on the federal level. I think now we're able to collect those dollars.
We will be able to collect those dollars once New York State authorizes us to collect those dollars. There was, you recall, the pending legislation that we discussed in previous meetings, and I think the chairman sent a letter supporting the adoption of that legislation. The session ended without it passing, and we'll keep our eye on Albany to see if they do pass enabling legislation, whether they come back into session to do it or do it during next year's session.
In regards to shared services, I know we're looking at towns and cities, but we have agreed to look at possibly doing an intergovernmental energy buy with Seneca County.
We're evaluating that. I forgot to mention that. Mr. Lattimore and I met with the county administrator and public works director from Seneca County to discuss their power purchases and evaluate whether what they were doing would work here and generating savings.
And I did bring up on the floor the city council the other day in regards to, I know that I worked with Doug in regards to cleaning out Hopes Park a number of years ago when I was mayor, and I know that they have a water lagoon that they went to a California outfit for $600,000. I think it could be done less with maybe soil and water and the city's vacuum system to clean out that lagoon. It has to be cleaned out every 30 years or something, but there's no hot material in there. It's water, and hopefully we can, we have state-of-the-art landfill while it's still open that can accept nuclear waste if we had to, but there should be some kind of a shared services thing in regards to that effort. I know that in years past, Falcon Park, where you were at last night, Justin, was a shared services thing between the city of Auburn and the county of Cayuga in regards to making the infield and the outfield.
Yeah, and I don't know if the landfill can accept nuclear waste, but
It's triple lined, it's pretty good.
I think they're trying to send that stuff to Yucca Mountain. But your point is well taken. To the extent that there's opportunities to share services and maintenance, and whether it be in public works or recreational facilities, we are exploring the option of including a project at Falcon Park with the college and the city as a potential shared service. We're getting together with Mr. Durant and the planning staff at the city to flush that out and hope to include that in the draft plan as well. And it's important to remember, each of these shared services, if they're adopted by the plan, submitted to the state, and then any savings that we can document on them is 100% reimbursable by the state. So we have to demonstrate those savings. But for example, if we were able to do a large project that saved the county by virtue of being the fiscal sponsor of the college a couple $1 million, that would potentially be 100% reimbursable by the state. So we're flushing out some creative options on a more intimate basis with the college, and also exploring a number of other items with the city.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Ms.
Whitman.
Lattimore.
Your three proposed changes, you say, are going to be an $85,000 impact on the budget. I suspect that's a negative impact.
In 2018, yes. That basically represents the cost of the new position of a purchasing agent. So, and partial year spending.
What are our projected savings?
It's hard to quantify. We do, the CGR report, I wish had gone into more detail, and gave us a better financial analysis of the opportunity in purchasing. I have to make the policy argument to you because I don't have the numbers. What I can say is that for a county our size, we do not have the sophisticated purchasing procurement operation that we should. And I'm confident that if we increased our capacity, there's a number of areas where we can save money. I don't necessarily think that we're going to save the cost of an entire position, but I do think that it's a strategic investment that has the potential to yield both returns on our own operations and hopefully some of the things that we're going to do through shared services.
So we'll cross our fingers.
I would ask you to do more than cross your fingers. I would ask you to give me some room to administer the operations, require that I track the savings that we do produce as a result, and report back to you on what the successes or failures have been over the next year.
Further questions? Mr. Foley?
Yeah, Justin, can you just clarify a few things for me regarding the finance department?
Sure.
It seems the memo that you gave us includes a lot of how you would do that. And for me, at least, it doesn't describe a lot of the benefits that we would potentially see. I mean, it does mention few. It says it would create a more accounting structure for a more centralized structure. And that would be beneficial. Of course, you'd be moving accounting and payroll into the different department, into the
Sure.
finance department. What other benefits are there to this process, if you can elaborate more?
Sure. The number one benefit is that Jim Orman is not going to be here forever. And we have.
Benefit?
No, I mean that, I mean that in the, as a great compliment to our treasurer. The treasurer's office is an elected position, and we have a number of critical operations that are in that role. And you could have a great treasurer and there be no issues. But you can't control who the people will elect to that position. So in the future, you could have a very different person in that office, and there'd be no accountability to the administrative operations or even to the legislature in terms of managing the accounting, the finance, the cash flow, the payroll, the benefits. And I believe there's a number of reasons why you'd want that independent and as part of your administrative operation.
All right, thank you for that. And just one more question. So we have WM3 tonight, and that seems to be tied into the priority of the finance department. If we do not approve WM3, how do you see yourself moving forward with that project?
I really hope you improve WM3, whether or not you like the concept of a finance department or not, because they're not fully real. They affect each other, but they're not integrated. WM3 is to appoint or authorize the appointment of a temporary deputy treasurer, because the deputy treasurer is out on long-term sick leave and is going to retire as soon as the sick time runs out in about 6 months. So, I didn't go too far on that, right? Okay. That creates a critical vacuum in our financial operations that needs to be filled. Now, I believe that also creates an opportunity, and it may have moved us up on the timeline from both Jim and I's perspective because of the opportunity that the vacancy presents. But at the end of the day, WM3 is an appointment of a deputy treasurer at the same level that the existing deputy treasurer is at.